What's going on, everyone? Today is the 19th of June, 2024. And in today's video, we're going to be discussing the death of legendary baseball star Willie Mays, who played 23 seasons in the major leagues, 21 of them with the Giants. And in this video, we'll be discussing the numerology of his passing, how it connects to the city of San Francisco, the Golden Gate Bridge, and also Dwight Clark. Willie Mays was best known for completing the catch in Game 1 of the 1954 World Series, a World Series which the Giants would go on to sweep. This play went down in baseball history as one of the most famous ever, and it has a name, just the catch. It was so iconic, they just call it the catch. Well, back in 2018, another San Francisco star athlete, Dwight Clark, passed away. In 1982, Dwight Clark completed what is called in American football the catch, which was a touchdown at the end of the NFC Championship game, or playoff game, I'm actually not sure. But this catch won the game for the 49ers. And what you're going to discover in this video is how the death of Willie Mays is a numerical riddle for the death of Dwight Clark. Now, that's what we'll be looking at as we go on in this video. Another strong element of this riddle is how this is all connected to the Skull and Bones Society, or Order 322. Willie Mays passed away 322 days before his birthday. Skull and Bones is headquartered at Yale University, which turned 322 years old last year. And we're going to talk about how it not only connects to Yale University, but also the attacks of September 11th. There are a number of very, very bizarre connections the death of Willie Mays has to this event. The president at the time of the 9/11 attacks was George W. Bush, who himself is a graduate of Yale University and a member of the Skull and Bone Society, much like his father, George H.W. Bush, who is also connected to this whole story. Before we get there, however, let's look at the basics for June 18th, the date that Willie Mays passed away. For starters, I want you to look at the date of the catch that Willie Mays made in 1954. Now, of course, most people watching this video, maybe everybody, we weren't alive when this happened. And unless you're a real baseball nut, this might even be the only highlight you're familiar with of Willie Mays. This catch was made on September 29th of 1954. This year, September 29th marks the end of the Major League Baseball season. But what's interesting about this date, September 29th, is that it's the day leaving 93 days on the calendar. Willie Mays passed away yesterday at the age of 93. Now, this is a number that's important to the World Trade Center, as back in the year 93, 8 years before the 9/11 attacks, there was a bombing that killed 6 people at the base of the building. If you take the first multiple of 93, 93 plus 93 is 186. And think about how this connects to the date that Willie Mays passed away, the 18th of June, which is written 18/6 in most parts of the world. June 18th is the date that leaves 196 days in the year. In the language of Gematria, where every letter transmits to a number, 1 through 26, in the alphabetic order, Willie Mays, the catch, sums to 196. In the reduction form of Gematria, which uses the rules of numerology to reduce every double-digit number to a single digit. The phrase "the catch" sums to 32, as well as 68 in the alphabetic order. Well, yesterday's date had primary numerology of 68 and also 32. These numbers achieved by simply adding the dates, or the digits in the date as you would say them out loud. 6 plus 18 plus 20 plus 24 is 68, like the catch. It was also said that he died on Tuesday afternoon, which equals 68. With the S exception, his nickname, the Say Hey Kid, sums to 68. And in another important cipher, which uses capital letters and simply mixes them in with the alphabetic order, the team he played most of his career with, the San Francisco Giants, sums to 680. Of course, the World Trade Center construction began in the year 68 on the date the 6th of August. Measuring from the death of Willie Mays to the anniversary of the catch on September 29th is 104 days. And when you write out his nickname in either Latin or ordinal Gematria, the Say Hey Kid sums to 1040 or 140. You have to admit, it's pretty cool that the San Francisco Giants has matching Gematria with Willie Howard Mays Jr. in both ordinal and reduction, summing to 225 and 90. As far as the 225, in the method of Gematria called Latin, or Agrippa's Key, a cipher which I consider to be the most significant in this entire study, Mets equals 225. And after spending 21 years with the Giants organization, the last year and a half of his career was spent with the New York Mets. So what this technically means is that he began his career in New York playing for the Giants, traveled with the team out west to San Francisco, and then went back to New York to finish his career. And this speaks to the riddle connecting to the World Trade Center that we'll look at shortly. San Francisco Giants also matches the Say Hey Kid, but what I also thought was interesting is that in Latin Gematria, San Francisco Giants equals 660. This is the number of home runs that Willie Mays hit throughout his 23-year Major League career, 660. So just like Dwight Clark, who spent his entire career in San Francisco, Willie Mays is quite familiar with the city. San Francisco's most iconic structure is the Golden Gate Bridge. Notice how Golden Gate Bridge sums to 81 in both reduction methods, whether you run the alphabet forwards or backwards. This phrase sums to 81 in both ciphers. Willie Mays was born exactly 81 sidereal months before the Golden Gate Bridge opened. Now, a sidereal month just measures the time it takes for the moon to orbit the Earth. This is a little over 27 days. This is always going to be a couple days shorter than a lunar phase or a synodic month. But this 81 is important, and when it comes to the Golden Gate Bridge, the moon is of utmost significance. Consider how on the opening ceremony on May 27th of 1937, a special song was played called "There's a Silver Moon on the Golden Gate." This is an astrological reference, as the moon was actually at the Golden Gate, or what was 266 degrees of the ecliptic, which is technically the center of the Milky Way galaxy. The golden ratio is 1.618. Notice how the Golden Gate Bridge has ordinal gematria of 168. These are the same three digits in the date that Willie Mays died, June 18th or 6/18. The Golden Gate Bridge also equals 93 in reverse reduction, the age that Mays died at. So next up, let's talk about how this all syncs up with Dwight Clark, who, just like Willie Mays, made a play called The Catch. Now, what's so interesting about this is if you measure between the birthdays of Willie Mays and Dwight Clark, you find that these two men were born exactly 1,340 weeks apart, with the end date included. In capital letters, The Catch equals 134. When Dwight Clark made his catch in 1982, he was even 1,304 weeks old. Meanwhile, when Willie Mays completed his catch in the World Series, it was exactly 1,134 weeks after construction began on the Golden Gate Bridge, January 5th of 1933, to the catch, 1,134 weeks exactly. Willie Mays played in baseball all the way through the year 1973. And 1973 stands out because that's the year that the World Trade Center first opened to the public. The grand inauguration of the Twin Towers back in April of 1973. Measuring from Dwight Clark's catch to the death of Willie Mays was 15,500 days. Well, in standard English gematria, when you write out the World Trade Center, it sums to 1550. Standard gematria is almost identical to Latin gematria. They use the same denary numeric system. However, the current 26-letter alphabet is used. Whereas Latin starts off with the 23-letter Latin alphabet, the classical Latin alphabet, and then adds more modern English characters towards the end. Now, as it stands, this is of course connected to George W. Bush, the president and member of Skull and Bones who presided over the 9/11 attacks. Notice how Skull and Crossbones equals 885. Skull and Crossbones 322 or Skull and Bones 322. Both of those phrases also sum to 885. And when Willie Mays made his catch, George Bush was 8 years and 85 days old. That catch was also a span of exactly 2,450 weeks before the attacks of 9/11. Well, 245 is the ordinal gematria of Skull and Bones Society. When Dwight Clark died, notice the number of days after he made his catch in the NFL, 13,295. Well, 295 is the gematria of Skull and Bones Society, the World Trade Center, and the two numbers 322 and 223. Again, those are the digits that appear on the emblem of the Skull and Bones Society. Now, of course, as I've been discussing for probably over a year now at this point on this channel, Yale University recently turned 322 years old in the year 2023. Now, this fact alone truly transcends coincidence. if you measure from that date, when they turned 322 years old, back to the birth of Willie Mays, notice how he turned 1,109 months old just 3 days before that date, which of course reflects the digits of 9/11. I talked a lot about the number 134 earlier. It's really the number that brings these two catch plays all together. The National Football League also equals 134. But notice the alphabetic ordinal value, 253. George W. Bush's father, George H.W. Bush, the 41st president, skull and bones equals 41 for the record. His full name sums to 253, matching the National Football League. Well, Willie Mays died 253 days after Yale's special anniversary. However, if you include the end date, this is also 254 days. Well, September 11th is the 254th day on the calendar. The death of Dwight Clark was also connected to Yale's 322nd anniversary, because his death was a span of 1,954 days before October 9th of 2023. Well, 1954 was the year that Willie Mays made his catch, which led the Giants to a sweep in the World Series, his only championship of his entire career. Now, the number 9/11 flipped upside down is 116. In the alphabetic order, Dwight Clark sums to 116. Dwight Clark was born exactly 119 weeks after Willie Mays' catch in 1954. These two guys, Dwight Clark and Willie Mays, if you measure between these dates, January 8th and May 6th, this is a span of 119 days. Dwight Clark died 6,110 days after the 9/11 attacks. When Willie Mays was born, it was 611 days before construction began on the Golden Gate Bridge. Notice how the phrase ritual human sacrifice equals 9/11, which is a little bit unsettling considering that this is the date of the largest terror attacks in the history of the U.S. In the alphabetic order, human sacrifice equals 130. And of course, a lot of people recognize the number 13 as being steeped in bad luck. Notice how Dwight Clark was born exactly 130 lunar phases after George Bush. And in the alphabetic order, George W. Bush equals 130. Clark would then go on to die 10 months and 30 days after W's birthday. However, notice how Dwight Clark died in 2018. This is the same year that Papa Bush, George H.W. Bush, died. Clark's death was 5 months and 27 days before the elder Bush. And in Gematria, when you use the ampersand, skull and bones sums to both 130 and 527. In another significant method of Gematria, called the Satanic Cipher, a really cool method that's structured around the number 666. When you write out the numbers 223 and 322, they both sum to 1030, syncing up with the 10-month and 30-day span. Now, yesterday was a span of 100 years and 7 days after the birth of George Bush, the first president, the 41st president. and an ordinal George Bush equals 107. Now, earlier I mentioned this 1109 with Willie Mays, turning 1109 months old, just before Yale's big date. Well, 1109 is a prime number. The 186th prime number, this is a number that Dwight Clark has in his Sumerian Gematria. Clark was even born 186 days after George W. Bush's birthday. But this is actually a significant number in the 9/11 attacks. Consider how the Twin Towers were struck by flights 11 and 175. When you add these numbers, it sums to 186. And this was a number I led the video off with, as the 18th of June was the date that Willie Mays died. And again, 186 is the first multiple of 93, the age he died at. The South Tower was struck at exactly 9:03 a.m. on 9/11. The other plane struck the 93rd floor, and then we also had Flight 93 crashing in Pennsylvania. When Bush first addressed the nation that morning, he did so at exactly 9:30 a.m. Willie Mays made his catch on the date leaving 93 days in the year. Dwight Clark made his catch on a date with 93 numerology. When you write the number 93, it has standard gematria of 1,322. And with capital letters, the World Trade Center sums to 322. The 322nd prime number is 2137. Clark's full name, Dwight Edward Clark, sums to 2136. Now, yes, that is one off. However, if you adhere to the rule of Kollel, which is a Kabbalistic rule attributed by Freemasonry, then perhaps this is actually a match. But the number 93, as I mentioned earlier, is a number connected to the World Trade Center bombing, which happened in the year 93. This bombing was on the date February 26th, or 226. Willie Mays died 2,206 days after Dwight Clark. If you include the end date, this is also 2,207 days, or exactly 72 months and 2 weeks. So here we have the 227 and the 722. In fact, Willie Mays died 2,027 days after George H.W. Bush. In the alphabetic order, September the 11th equals 227, while in standard, 9/11/2001 equals 2207. Also notice the time of the World Trade Center bombing that morning, 11:18 a.m. Well, 1118 is another occultic number connected to skull and bones. Check this out. In most years, the date 1118 is the 322nd day on the calendar. However, this year, because it's a leap year, that distinction goes to November 17th, or 1117. Well, Willie Mays was 1,117 months old when he died. Or you could also say he was in his 1,118th month. And as I mentioned at the top of the video, he died 322 days before his birthday at the age of 93. And again, in standard gematria, 93, 1322. Willie Mays' next birthday would have been his 94th birthday, and World Trade Center equals 94. So does the phrase ritual human sacrifice, which we saw earlier, also has that 9/11. A couple other notes here is that Dwight Clark's catch was exactly 41 years and 9 months before Yale's special anniversary. If you check out the links below, you'll find a video I made last year that does a great deep dive into Yale, Skull and Bones, and the Eclipse Code. So check that out for sure if you haven't seen it already. Yale and the Skull and Bones Society is essentially structured numerically around the tower card of the tarot. And the Twin Towers were just one of a handful of riddles connected to this. Remember back in 1995, we had the Oklahoma City bombing at the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. And that was on 4/19, April 19th. Willie Mays died 162 days after Dwight Clark's birthday. This is a major number for Major League Baseball, which sums to 162, just like baseball in reverse and primes, or MLB in Sumerian. Remember, every team plays 162 games per year. The last name Clark even has matching 114 Gematria with Major League Baseball and San Francisco Giants, the team that Willie played most of his career with. So once again, it seems like no matter how old the celebrity, this code of letters and numbers is always pertinent, as is the case with yesterday's news. So if you want to find out more, as always, there's some relevant links in the description to a couple of past videos. You can find the blog post in here as well. I know there was one more thing I wanted to add here. I think it had something to do with the Golden Gate Bridge. Kind of flying off the cuff here at the end. So yesterday was 31,800 days after the Golden Gate Bridge opened. Now I want to talk about why I thought this was interesting. 318. This is what you get when you take 7 divided by 22. Notice how 7 divided by 22 is 0.318 repeating. Well, when you take 22 divided by 7, you get 3.14, the first 3 digits of pi. This is the smallest equation using integers you can use to get this. In the alphabetic order, when you write out 22 divided by 7, it sums to 314, just like the equation on the calculator. And of course, 227, this was a significant number to September the 11th, 227. And just to confirm this pi connection, back in 2012, there was a film called Life of Pi that was released. And it was based on a book that was published on September 11th, 2001. So I'm sure there's more to unpack with the Golden Gate Bridge riddle. For one, I actually talked about Robin Williams recently in one of my videos. Check out my video on the retirement of Pat Sajak. I even put Robin Williams there in the thumbnail, as this was a riddle connected to Good Morning Vietnam. Pat Sajak hosted the same radio show that Adrian Cronauer hosted, and he continued that tradition. So his retirement was synced up with the death of Robin Williams. Of course, there's been a lot of tarot riddles. Pat Sajak, the host of Wheel of Fortune, which is a card in the tarot, a trump card. Of course, we got the conviction of Trump recently, a whole bunch of other riddles that connect. But yeah, I think that'll just about do it for this video. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. Whether you're watching live or archived, please feel free to share, like, and subscribe, even though it doesn't seem to help the algorithm much on my channel, which, as any good Gematria channel on YouTube, is among the most suppressed there is. So, yeah, check out Rumble for some of my videos if YouTube ever decides to completely squash the content, as I'll be uploading everything I'm doing to that website going forward. All right, everyone. Peace, love, God bless, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.